السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله على إحسانه وشكر له على تفضله وامتنانه، ولا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه أما بعد. إخواني في الله, we're continuing with our lecture series regarding the signs of the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, فَقَدْ جَاءَ أَشْرَاطُهَا, that verily the signs of the day of judgment have appeared. We are looking at sign number 7, Fitnah. There will be a lot of trials and tribulations in the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And from the Fitnah, we mentioned in the previous classes that the majority of the Fitnah that befalls this Ummah comes from the East, and more particularly the land of Iraq. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, أَلَا إِنَّ الْفِتْنَ هَا هُنَا أَلَا إِنَّ الْفِتْنَ هَا هُنَا. He says the fitna comes from this side. The fitna comes from this side. And he points to the lands of Iraq. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says in authentic hadith, Allahumma barik lana fi sa'ina wa muddina. Oh Allah, bless us with our weighing scale in our sa' and our mudd. Allahumma barik lana fi shamina wa yamanina. Oh Allah, bless us in the lands of Sham and bless us in the lands of Yemen. Then the Prophet ﷺ is asked by one of the companions, وَفِي عِرَاقِنَا, what about Iraq? He says, إِنَّ بِهَا قَرْنُ الشَّيْطَانِ, that is where the horns of shaitan are. وَبِهَا تَهِيجُ الْفِتَنِ, and that is where the fitna comes from. Ikhwani fillah, we looked at the previous lessons, and in the forthcoming lessons we shall also look at, most of the fitna came from Iraq. The people who came to kill Uthman ibn Affan, the majority of them were from the lands of Iraq, from Basra, from Kufa. The fitna that we're taking also tonight, the fitna of saying that the Qur'an is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also came from the lands of Iraq. The fitna of the Khawarij, the fitna of the Ithna Ashariya, the Shia, all these fitnas, the majority of them comes from the land of Iraq. Killing of Hussein came in the lands of Iraq. So all this fitna comes from the lands of Iraq and beyond it. The Khalifa al-Ma'mun is one of the Khalifa of the Khulafa of Islam. This man was a genius. He was the leader of the Muslims, but he was also a scholar. So he decides to bring scholars from the entire world to the capital city of the Islamic Empire, Baghdad. And they translate the Greek books, the books of Latin into Arabic. And when he read these books of Aristotle, of Plato, and other Greek intellectuals, he became affected by their thinking. So much so that he gathered amongst him scholars from the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah. Amongst them, Ahmad ibn Duad, Bishr al-Marisi, and others and the like of them. So he wanted to force the Muslims to say that the Qur'an is not the word of Allah, as we all Muslims believe, but he wanted the Muslims to follow his belief that the Qur'an was a creation of Allah. But only one thing was preventing him from doing that. He wanted to force all the Muslims to this statement, but only one person was preventing him to do such a thing. At the time, there was a scholar called Yazid ibn Harun. So he sends his spies, go check if Yazid ibn Harun is still alive. So they go and check, the Imam Yazid ibn Harun is still alive. And he's asked, the Imam, the Khalifa al-Ma'mun, wants to force the people to claim that the Qur'an is not the word of Allah, but a creation of Allah. What do you think about this? Yazid ibn Harun, as mentioned by Yahya ibn Abi Talib, has over 70,000 students. And he has a lot of strength and power. If he commands the Muslims, go revolt, they will revolt. So the leaders were afraid of him. He says, Wallahi, the Amir al-Mu'mineen cannot do such a thing. So the Khalifa was very hesitant to force the Muslims as long as this man was present, Yazid ibn Harun. Then Yazid ibn Harun, the great scholar, passed away in the year 206 of the Hijri calendar. And the Khalifa al-Ma'mun ibn Rashid, he got strength, he got the power that he wanted to start forcing the Muslims to say the Qur'an is not the word of Allah, but a creation of Allah. One of the greatest fitna to befall this ummah. A fitna that has no basis. It is actually a useless philosophical argument that even the layman cannot understand. What is the point of saying the Qur'an is the word of Allah? Is it something Allah has mentioned in the Qur'an or in the Sunnah? It's a philosophical argument that has no basis and has no benefit. But the Khalifa wanted to force the Muslims to this statement. And he threatened the scholars, and he tortured many of them. He imprisoned some of them, and about 4 scholars lost their lives in this trial, in this fitna of the qawl bi khalq al-Qur'an. Amongst them Muhammad ibn Nuh, amongst them Ahmad ibn Nasr al-Khuza'i, amongst them one of the great students of Imam al-Shafi'i al-Buwaiti, amongst them Nu'aym ibn Hamad, Sahib al-Kitab al-Fitan. These scholars lost their lives. And the majority of the scholars of Islam, they accepted out of fear. إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَا وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ. They feared, they said, we have been forced to say this thing, we do not want to say it. But we are forced because of the punishment and the torture, we will say it. And some of them, they used to say, Al-Qur'an, وَالتَّوْرَاء وَالْإِنْجِيل وَالزَّبُورِ هَذِهِ أَرْبَعَ مَخْلُوقَةً. They used to use a deception. They used to say, the Qur'an, the Torah, the Injil, and the Zabur. These 4, they are pointing at their fingers that these 4 are created, not that those books are creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're using this form of deception. But one man, Imam Ahmad Ibn Hanbal, who was a scholar of hadith at the time, a world-renowned scholar of fiqh, a person who had memorized over 1,000 hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Over 1 million hadiths this man has memorized. 1,000, 1,000 times 1,000, 1 million hadith. This man stood firm and he refused this claim of saying the Qur'an is a creation of Allah. When Al-Ma'mun heard that Ahmad ibn Hanbal is refusing, he says to his police commissioner in Baghdad, bring him chained. Him and Muhammad ibn Nuh, bring them chained. I'm here fighting the Romans, bring them to where I am chained, I shall deal with Ahmad. If he refuses to say, I'm going to slaughter him by myself. So Imam Ahmad, almost over 50, almost 60 years of age, he's chained to the neck, his legs, and is put to a caravan to head to Ma'mun. And he makes a dua. He says, Oh Allah, I ask you Allah that I do not see Ma'mun, and let Ma'mun not see me. Oh Allah, let me not see Ma'mun, and let Ma'mun not see me. He raised his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his dua at the same moment. And Al-Ma'mun, who was fighting the lands of Rome, he fell from his boat or something, and he drowned in the river, and he died. So as they were going towards the journey, this young man, Muhammad ibn Nuh, the other scholar who refused to answer this bid'ah, this innovation, he died on the way. Ahmad ibn Hanbal is the only person who prayed for him his janazah. But he says, Wallah, I've never seen such a young man in my life. This young scholar that many of the Muslims do not know of, this is an excellent man, and he praised him well. And he continued on his journey. Then as he was in his journey, a Bedouin, an Arab, comes to him. And he says to him, Ya Ahmad, in a place called Rahbat al-Tawq, he comes, he says, Ya Ahmad, in mitta shahidan, in qutilta mitta shahidan. If you're killed, you shall die a martyr. وَإِنْ عِشْتَ عِشْتَ حَمِيدًا. And if you live, you shall live a glorious life. He says, Imam Ahmad, فَقَوِّيَ قَلْبِ بِذَلِكَ. He gave me strong resolve that I remain firm, saying that the Qur'an is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not a creation. So he went, and the new Caliph of the Muslims, Al-Mu'tasim, he was brought to him. Imam Ahmad was in prison for a few days. He was brought to the Khalifa. The Khalifa Al-Mu'tasim, he says, my brother Al-Ma'mun passed away, and he had commanded for us to punish you, and I shall follow my brother's last wishes. Oh Ahmad, you are a renowned scholar. I do not want to harm you in the least bit. Just accept that the Qur'an is not the word of Allah. It is a creation, and I shall not do anything to you. Imam Ahmad, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, show me anything from the book of Allah or from the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I can use as a basis to say what you want me to say. You're being difficult, Ahmad. Just say it, I'm going to leave you. Imam Ahmad only says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, show me something from the Qur'an, a dalil from the Sunnah, I can follow, then we'll have no trouble. So Al-Ma'mun, he says, bring some men, strong men, have them carry some whips. I only want them to whip Ahmad once or twice with all their strength, because the third and the fourth will be a weaker one. I want to use all your strength in the first whip and the second whip. Imam Ahmad, when he heard these words, he started shaking in fear. He says, Wallah, I was not afraid of the sword hitting my neck and I die. I was very afraid of the whip. But there's a young man who was next to me called Abu Haytham. He hits me and he says, Ya Ahmad, ta'rifuni? "Oh Ahmad, do you know me?" Says, "La a'rifuka, I do not know you." Says, "Ana Abu Haytham, I am Abu Haytham, a famous thief in Baghdad. It has been recorded in the Diwan, in the records of the Amir al-Mu'mineen, that I have been whipped 18,000 times. I have been whipped 18,000 times. All of that, I was patient, yet it was in the ta'ah of shaitan. You were doing this in the obedience of Allah, of Ar-Rahman. Be patient, Ahmad." Imam Ahmad, he says, "Wallahi, these words of this man gave me such strong conviction, strong resolve, that I remained patient upon this trial." So they started whipping Imam Ahmad. They whipped him until the whip enters it passes his mid, the bones, severe beating, and he fainted, rahimahullah. Mu'tasim wakes him up and tells him, "Ahmad, say it." He refuses. Mu'tasim himself, the Khalifa, starts beating up and whipping up Imam Ahmad, thinking that this is religion, because he's been incited by the likes of Ahmad ibn Duwad and Bishr al-Marisi, these evil scholars. Ahmad is taken to prison in a state that is unconscious. Imam Ahmad Ibn Hanbal, the Imam of Ahl Sunnah. He wakes up and asks, "What happened?" He says, "Imam, you were beaten so severely that you fainted, you collapsed, and you now have been brought back to the prison." So Imam Ahmad remained in prison for 30 months, about 28 months to 30 months. Then he was released by Al-Mu'tasim. And he used to say, "Wallahi, I'm not going to forgive Al-Mu'tasim. I'm not going to forgive Ahmad ibn Duwad, Bishr al-Marisi. These people who did this to me, I'm not going to forgive them." Then an interesting event happened in Islamic history. The Romans attacked the city of the Muslims, and they captured many of the Muslims. And one of the women of Islam was slapped by a Roman general or a Roman soldier. And this woman, when she was slapped, because of her honor as an Arab woman, as a Muslim lady, she screamed, "Wa Mu'tasima! Whoa, where is Mu'tasima? Where is the Khalifa of the Muslims?" When these words reached Al-Mu'tasim, he was holding a glass of water, and he shook, and he said, "Wallahi, I'm not going to drink this water until I answer the call of this sister." And he set out with his army from the lands of Iraq to the lands of the Romans, and he defeated the Romans and captured the city of Amuriya. When Ahmad ibn Hanbal heard this news, he was happy like the rest of the Muslims, and he says, "Ya Aba Ishaq, ay Mu'tasim, I have forgiven Mu'tasim." And the fitna continued. Mu'tasim passed away. Then came his brother Al-Wathiq. Al-Wathiq continued his fitna. Then came Al-Mutawakkil, the Khalifa Al-Mutawakkil, in the year 232 of the Hijri calendar, or 234, تقريبا 234. And he lifted the trial that was known as the fitna of the qawl bi khalq al-Qur'an. And all the Muslims from that day on till today, they say Al-Qur'an kalamullah ghayru makhluq. The Qur'an, the book of Allah, is the word of Allah. It is the word of Allah. It is not a creation. They did not accept the philosophical arguments that was set out by this group of the Mu'tazila. Khani fillah, this is one of the greatest fitna to befall the Ummah that few of us know about, the fitna of saying the Qur'an is makhluk. With this, we end our lecture series tonight. Inshallah, in the next lecture, we shall look at another fitna of the Khawarij, also from the lands of Iraq, and how they killed Ali ibn Abi Talib, and how they spread their fitna, and how they're present to this day until the day they join the Masih al-Dajjal. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.